And we're going to start that in a minute.
Continuation.
We'll let folks part who are here for the forum.
The whole meeting.
We are about to start.
We have to get our cameras up.
The cameras are coming on, and then we'll be the start.
Yeah, about as fine.
Good evening and welcome to the business portion of the Charlotte City Council October 23rd meeting. We are going to, we've got an interesting meeting tonight in that we have a regular business meeting, and that will be followed by the remainder of a zoning meeting that we had last week that ran very long. And so we're going to conclude those last cases, those hearings this evening as well. But first, we'll start with our business meeting, and we will begin that, as we usually do, with introductions of those around the dais, followed by an invocation from Councilmember Ivory. Is that correct? And then the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'll start our introductions with our clerk.
Good evening, Emily Kunze, Deputy City Clerk.
Good evening, Carlenia Ivory, District 2.
Good evening, Dimple Ajmera, District 5.
Ed Driggs, District 7.
Patsy Kinsey, District 1.
Claire Fallon at large.
Julie Eiselt at large.
Mayor Jennifer Roberts, welcome.
Mayor Pro Tem Vi Lyles, good evening.
Good evening, James Mitchell at large.
Greg Phipps, District 4.
Good evening, Kenny Smith, District 6.
Good evening, Lawana Mayfield, District 3.
Marcus Jones, City Manager.
Bob Hageman, City Attorney.
Now, I want to remind folks that when we do our invocation followed by the pledge, the invocation is a personal expression by the member of the council intended to solemnize our proceedings. It is not an endorsement of any particular religious belief. Rather, we note and celebrate the diversity of our community, including our religious diversity. You are welcome to stand during the invocation, but you are certainly not required to do so. I would, however, ask that you do stand for the Pledge of Allegiance after the invocation. Councilmember Ivory.
Thank you, and good evening again. You do not have to stand, but I think this is rather appropriate because I wrote some notes that were very important to me, and before I share the inspirational poem. But it was pray for peace and respect each other's opinion regardless of whether you agree or not. And do at least one kind act a day. And I think it's very important that we all speak so others will listen, and listen so others will speak. So if you'll just sit and close your eyes and meditate while I read this poem that I try to read at least once a week. It's the best day of my life. Today when I awoke, I suddenly realized that this is the best day of my life ever. There were times when I wondered if I would make it today, but I did. And because I did, I'm going to celebrate. Today I'm going to celebrate what an unbelievable life I have had so far. The accomplishments, the many blessings, and yes, even the hardships, because they have served to make me stronger. I will go through this day with my head held high and a happy heart. I will marvel at our seemingly simple gifts, the morning dew, the sun, the clouds, the trees, the flowers, the birds. Today, none of these miraculous creations will escape my notice. Today, I will share my excitement for life with other people. I will make someone smile. I'll go out of my way to perform an unexpected act of kindness for someone I don't even know. Today, I'll give a sincere compliment to someone who seems down. I'll tell a child how special he or she is, and I'll tell someone I love just how deeply I care for him or her and how much they mean to me. Today is the day I quit worrying about what I don't have and start being grateful for all the wonderful things I have been given. I'll remember that to worry is just a waste of time because my faith in His divine plan ensures everything will be just fine. And tonight, before I go to bed, I'll go outside and raise my eyes to the heavens. I will stand in awe at the beauty of the stars and the moon, and I will praise Him for these magnificent treasures. As the day ends and I lay my head down on my pillow, I will thank the Almighty for the best day of my life, and I will sleep the sleep of a contented child, excited with expectation, because I know tomorrow is going to be the best day of my life ever. Thank you.
Let's now stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So the first item on our business meeting is the consent agenda. We have several items that have been pulled, so I need a motion to approve 13 through 33, with the exception of 15, 18, 28, and 33.
So moved.
Second.
Mayor,
32,
Oh, sorry, 32.
33.
There's a 33 as well.
Can you
Yes,
repeat?
Councilman Kerr. Okay, so let me amend this statement, with the exception of 15, 18, 28, 32, and 33.
Mayor, and also 26.
Oh, we got another one.
Wait a minute.
For a separate vote?
Yeah, 26,
Okay.
just to pull for information, that's it.
So do you want a separate vote?
No.
Okay, well then I will let you make a comment when we discuss the
Okay.
consent ones. Okay. So again, the only ones pulled for separate vote are 15, 18, 28, 32, and 33.
So moved.
Clear, Madam Clerk?
Second.
Okay. All right, was there a second?
Yep.
Okay. So now for those items, is there any?
Vote on that? We have to vote on that, Mayor.
Correct, but we are going to have a discussion of items under those consent ones that are not pulled separately that people want to comment on.
Right.
Okay.
That makes sense? Okay. And the first two are actually two I want to comment. Again, we don't need a separate vote, but they are in that list, and it is items 13 and 14, which have to do with grants for the Crime Lab. U.S. Department of Justice National Sexual Assault Kit Initiative Grant, and a Capacity Enhancement and Backlog Reduction Program grant. And I want to just let the community know that we are working very hard. I applaud CMPD and our crime lab for reducing the number of rape kits that had not been tested. So these grants are going to help us become current. Currently, there are 211 sexual assault kits that have not been tested, an additional 600 that have been partially tested, and these grants are going to help us reduce this backlog so that they will be up to current by February of 2018. We'll be current with sexual assault kit testing, and a total of 264 kits have been submitted to CMPD in 2017. This is also the case with the DNA testing. We're going to be bringing those tests current very soon, and I want to let folks know that federal grants have made this possible. Since 2015, over $70 million has been made available through federal grants to assist cities and states with the issue of untested sexual assault kits. And so I just wanted to bring that to the awareness of the community and to thank our Crime Lab and CMPD for getting those grants and for continuing to reduce that backlog. So those are 13 and 14 that are among those that we're going to approve by consent. And then I know we have Councilmember Kinsey wanted to talk about, and let's see, Councilmember Mayfield wanted to talk about 15. Oh, that's pulled separately. Okay, are there any others that have not been pulled separately that anyone wants to address?
I know James had one.
Councilmember Mitchell.
26.
Oh, it was number 26.
Okay.
And this is strictly information, Mayor and Council, and to John Lewis and Katz, thank you so much. When you look at the write-up, our established BE goal was 0, and we actually awarded 100% to BSL Galbraith. So thank you to Katz for making sure some of our CBI and DBE can participate. Move for approval.
Okay. Are there any further comments on any of those items that have not been pulled for a separate vote?
I don't need a separate vote, but usually
That's
you're,
okay.
you're changing it up on me, so I'm certainly happy to speak to the 3 items I pulled, because I don't need a separate vote, but if that makes it smoother.
Well, the motion's already been to remove them, so we'll
Okay,
just
that's
vote
fine.
separately.
I'm good.
Okay, all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item 15 is Granite Point Apartments, and Councilmember Mayfield wanted to pull that.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the bond issuance approval, so the action tonight is to adopt a resolution granting the Charlotte Housing Authority's request to issue the multifamily housing revenue bond, which is in an amount not to exceed $23 million to finance the development of Granite Point Apartments. This project, when first brought to council in September of 2016, was a request for a waiver. I was out of town the particular night that this vote happened, but I sent a letter to my colleagues, because this is a development off of Nations Ford Road, where a number of the community that's already over there, we have multiple apartment complexes that are what would be considered affordable apartments, and we also have a lot of concerns in the community in this area. So tonight, even though it was, I think, mislabeled in a media report earlier today that this is a Charlotte Housing Authority request, it isn't. Charlotte Housing Authority only holds the bonds. So this request specifically is for the issuance for one particular project, and it's not in connection to the other 5 projects that the committee, as well as all the council, approved for the upcoming 5 projects. This project I am going to be voting no on. This is concentrating poverty. Every time we have a conversation, we talk about, well, next time we'll do better. Next time is here. I am concerned that in 2016, when this was moved forward by some of my colleagues, that they did not listen to the multiple emails and calls that were received by the community requesting us to rethink what is going into that area, especially off of Nations Ford Road. So, Mayor, I am moving for this particular request to be denied, and if my colleagues choose to approve it, I will be a no vote. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Isel?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to remind the council that when we looked at this project, the AMI for this project, I believe, was 60%. Was that right? Which is 42,000. The average income for the area is a little over 25,000. So the income that this is targeting is above the average income for the area. So I think and the project itself is fewer units than it would be by right. So I think it's a good project, and I think it does actually lift the average income for the area.
Do you want to make the motion, since we don't have a motion yet to pass it?
I'd like to make a motion to pass it.
Second.
Was there a second?
That's the second.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you. Thank you. Any other comment, Councilor Phipps?
Yeah, I guess I have to take exception with the language that was used in terms of this particular project being an effort to concentrate poverty in a particular area. I think we need to be careful how we characterize affordable housing projects, because we have a community that embraces affordable housing, but I think there's a reluctance sometimes to have affordable housing projects in a particular area for fear that with this kind of language would try to infer that the availability of such housing would be labeled as contributing to poverty. So I think that we have to be careful if we want to have reach our goals with affordable housing in terms of the language that we use to try to have community acceptance, because a lot of times when I go to meetings to talk about affordable housing, it turns into a discussion about avoidable housing. So I just hope that we could be careful in future conversations to make sure that we embrace the language that would be more conducive to community acceptance of what we're trying to do in terms of focusing our goals to build more affordable housing in certain areas. I think with this project, the quality of this project, I dare say that that this project would add, in terms of quality housing stock, that would probably be far superior than other stock that's even available in that area now. So I would hope that we would watch language on that going forward. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Mayfield, you want to?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate my colleagues' comments, but when we talk about the reality of diverse price point housing, there's a different conversation when you talk about the idea around affordable. Unfortunately, the reality is for a lot of people, the word affordable has created some negative thoughts. And when we talk about true diverse price point housing, we also need to think about impact on community. So when I mention any conversation regarding the concentration of poverty, the reality is government played a role. When we go back to the creation of redlining, when we look at projects that we have approved, when we look at having these conversations around this dais, the community had multiple concerns and questions regarding this project. There are multiple units that are already in that area that truly have diverse price point housing. When this project was presented, because affordable is the language that we use now, that is how this project was presented to council. Yes, it is at 60%. The reality is, in this area of Nations Ford Road, there are some challenges. I had conversations with the potential developers. Had it moved a few blocks closer to light rail, it would have been a very different conversation. But the reality of what is happening in the apartment complexes that are already at the price point that this complex will come in at true diverse price point housing, is the reality of a higher level of negativity than the community would like to see, which is why they had concerns. So we have multiple conversations where there are going to be times where we vote against the community's request. There are going to be times that we vote in support of. I chose to listen to the community when I asked my colleagues not to support this, because not only as the district rep, but someone who's in the area quite often, the conversation and the concerns were very real, and I acknowledged them, and I supported their recommendation for the area as new development is happening in the area simultaneously as this. Again, I respect my colleagues' decision. I, on the other hand, am saying, as I voted no through email, since I was not in attendance at the meeting, I am continuing that I have a concern with us issuing this particular bond request, but I respect where my colleagues land on this development.
Can I ask a technical question? Is there somebody on the staff that could answer a question about the bond? Maybe. If council were to not approve this, since it doesn't impact our CIP, it doesn't impact the city's budget, but it's the authority to issue a bond at a 4% tax credit. What does that leave the housing authority in the option if we vote this down tonight?
Hello, my name is Randy Harrington. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the city. I do not know what options that would provide the CHA, but under the IRS regulations, they require city council, in this case, the governing body in the area, to approve it. So I think it's fair to say without the approval, it wouldn't go forward in its current form, but I'm not available, or I'm not equipped to speak to what options might be available.
Mayor?
That's an answer.
Actually,
So there's a piece to that with CHA as he's coming down. Remember, CHA is only the holder of the bond. So Charlotte Housing Authority is not requesting this and has no opinion in this particular project one way or the other. Their role is strictly as the bond holder. They're a pass-through.
Okay.
Good evening. Troy Draws, Charlotte Housing Authority. First, I wanted to thank you for clarifying the Housing Authority's role in this. We are merely the conduit issuer, so it is the way that the developer, whether it's PEDCOR in this case, or CMHP, or Laurel Street, and any other kind of bond deals that happen in Charlotte, they have to go through this process. So essentially, if the council is the highest governing body within the jurisdiction, does not approve it, it does essentially kill the project. And really, again, since the Housing Authority is just a conduit, there are really no options for the Housing Authority. We're merely a pass-through to provide access to the bonds and the tax credits that come from the state's bond cap allocation program.
Okay. Let's take, Councilor Driggs?
I just wanted to say I'm impressed with a lot of the points that Councilmember Mayfield has made. I do have a concern that we did actually make this decision, and that our failure to implement this administrative step, which is basically what it is at this point, would set a bad precedent. I think it would undermine our credibility. This is not actually the moment where we talk about the merits of this thing. We did that. And this is the moment where we take an implementation step in order to carry out what we already decided to do. So I'm just a little worried about sabotaging something that people assumed that we had already approved and relied on.
Councilmember Romero?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is a question for Troy. With this tax credit deal, I see it's 4%. What are some of the other options that a developer would have if council were not to approve it in terms of financing?
Well, as the deal is currently structured, I would really want to defer to the developer on what they think their options are. As far as if they were trying to do a tax credit deal differently, they could always apply to the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency for 9% credits. But I think you all know through, the other projects that have come before you, it's highly competitive. I think it's oversubscribed 12 times. So there's 12 applications to every one that wins. So it's highly competitive and not very likely to get an award, in any given round. And it's really not for us to comment on how they would go about it. It would be an option that would be available if they chose to do that. But ultimately, it is the developer's choice to decide which way they'd like to go. And again, the Housing Authority is just a conduit for them to have access to those funding sources.
Okay. Any further questions?
Call to order. Good question.
Okay, so there was a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay. All those opposed? Okay. Thank you. I think that was a very good discussion, and it reflects some of the challenges that we have as we continue to try to bring housing
Mayor.
to Charlotte. Councilor Mitchell?
City Manager, just for information, I think it'll be helpful as we get a current status of, per district, affordable housing units we have. I think as we move more and more toward where do we put affordable housing, it's very important we get an update, because I know since we're sitting down here, we have approved so many, and I don't know which district we approved them in, but I think it will help us in our further discussion. So can we get a breakdown by district?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
All right, the next one is number 18, which is Monroe Road Streetscape Planning and Design. Councilmember McKenzie.
Thank you. Well, over a period of several years, I've been asked what's going to happen to Monroe Road, when are we going to get something done. Government moves slowly, but I wanted to let everybody know that there is a plan, and that we're approving the contract tonight, I hope. Well, let's see. Yeah, we have to approve it tonight in the amount of $1,699,000 with architects, engineers to start the planning and design. The streetscape project was identified in the Independence Boulevard area plan. The proposed project includes making improvements between Briar Creek and Sharon Amity Road to create a more pedestrian-oriented and mixed-use development. Proposed improvements include sidewalks, mid-block crossings, bicycle lanes, and on-street parking. This is just a contract for the planning and design phase, so it's going to be a little while before it's completed, but it is anticipated that City Council will be asked for construction funding in, hopefully, the not-too-distant future. So I just wanted to let everybody know that it is coming, and I appreciate it, and I move approval of this.
Second.
Councilmember Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'd like to echo some of the comments that Councilmember Kinsey had made. This also extends to District 5, and when I attended some of the neighborhood meetings with Oakhurst, Amity Gardens, and Mora residents, it was pretty clear that residents wanted improved infrastructure to create a more mixed-use development. So I think this directly addresses the needs of our community. And I want to thank all the residents, and I see some of them are right here representing the east side. And also, I want to thank our staff. I've attended some of these community investment plan meetings, especially with our engineering staff, hosting these meetings over weekends and evenings to ensure that residents can attend these meetings. So I appreciate our engineering staff's commitment to this project and addressing the needs of our community. So with that, I move to approve.
Any further comments? Okay. All in favor of number 18, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next, as we move down the numbers, the next item is number 28, Airport Terminal Lobby Expansion Pre-Construction Services, and Mayor Pro Tem Lyles wanted to bring that one forward.
I wanted to bring this forward because Councilmember Smith has raised the question whether or not my vote on September the 25th on the interlocal agreement with the CRVA for the Convention Center expansion and the allocation of Convention Center tax funding was legal or ethical. Councilmember Smith knows my son Kwame Alexander works as one of the project managers at R.J. Leeper. His accusation was made because the CRVA is contracting with a number of firms, including R.J. Leeper. Agenda item 28 also includes R.J. Leeper as one of several firms selected for the airport lobby expansion pre-construction services. I would actually like to ask the city attorney to address the question of my obligation to vote on the September 25th decision as well as this agenda item. Mr.
So,
Hageman,
Mayor Pro
please.
Tem, and you and I have had this conversation privately, and you've asked me to share my opinion publicly. What I'm going to do here is explain the law, and I recognize that some members of the community may disagree with the law and think it should be something different, but this is the law in North Carolina. The School of Government has stated that municipal and county governing boards have a duty to vote. There's no authority to abstain or be excused for a mere, quote, appearance of impropriety. Instead, state law is specific about when members can be excused from voting. So there are two laws in North Carolina that are at play right here. The first is GS General Statute 168-75. It's a statute that applies to cities in North Carolina. It applies to this council as a governing board. It's entitled Voting. And it reads in relevant part, no member shall be excused from voting except upon matters involving the consideration of the member's own financial interest or official conduct, or on matters in which the member is prohibited from voting under GS 14-234 and a couple of other statutes that aren't relevant here. So what the thrust of that statute is that each of you have a duty to vote, and you may not be excused unless it is a matter involving your own financial interest or official conduct, or you're prohibited from voting under GS 14-234. 14-234 deals with public officers and employees involved in the making and administration of contracts. In relevant part for this body, when you approve councils, you are the maker of a contract. And the statute says that no public officer who is involved in making a contract on behalf of a public entity may derive a direct benefit from the contract except as otherwise authorized. So you cannot vote and be involved in the award of a contract in which you would derive a direct benefit. Statute goes on to define a direct benefit by saying a public officer derives a direct benefit from a contract if the person or his or her spouse, one, has more than a 10% ownership interest in the other party to the contract, two, derives any income or commission directly from the contract, or three, acquires property under the contract. So the prohibition under that statute is triggered when the council member or the council member's spouse has a direct interest in the contract. So we're dealing with two standards here. One, each of your own personal financial interest, and or whether you or your spouse has an ownership interest, derives income or commission or property from a contract that's before you. You'll note that there is nothing in those statutes that spoke to a child or other relative of the council. And again, fair point on whether or not that should be disqualifying. I think people would have different points of view on that. Under North Carolina law, that is not a basis for recusal. I'll conclude by stating that the voting statute emphasizes the fact of duty to vote by stating, and you're all familiar with this, that the failure to vote by a member who's physically present or has withdrawn without being excused is recorded as an affirmative vote. So there is no abstention under North Carolina law, excusal or recusal only for own financial interest or under the contract law that I described. Finally, I did, just out of an abundance of caution, I've been doing this for a long time and I'm quite familiar and confident in my opinion, but I did confirm with the School of Government last week that I'm reading the law correctly.
Mayor, may I ask a follow-up as well? You know, one of the questions about this has been the role of an immediate family member. Now, my son is an adult, has a family, but I wondered if you would also address, should council really look at the role of immediate family members as a conflict of interest? I know that's what the current law is, but I'm just really concerned that this reached an employee, an adult child.
So, Mayor Pro Tem, I guess I'd provide two responses. Certainly, it's in your prerogative of a body in seeking legislative change. If the body believes the law should be something other than what I described, you're well within your rights to pursue, as a body or individually, legislative change. The second point I'll make is that there are things that you do have discretion with, and that has to do with disclosure, for example. You have an ethics policy. Your ethics policy can't contradict or trump state law, but you can do things with your ethics policy, and in fact, this body has. Several years ago, you all will recall that the council amended the ethics policy by including a disclosure form, a statement of economic interest. And it's sunshine. Mm-hmm. It's disclosure, not prohibition on conduct or action. And there are required disclosures that each of you are required to file with the city clerk annually by the end of January regarding ownership interests that you or covered individuals have in areas such as stock and real estate, involvement and interest in corporations. There's a whole host of disclosures. I will remind you that the form requires you to disclose.
The Boy Scout troop that's leaving. Sorry.
Disclose.
Hope you're on your civics badge.
Disclose that information regarding yourself, as well as it reads, your spouse, minor children, and members of your extended family that reside in your household. Extended family includes you or your spouse's adult children, grandchildren, parents, grandparents, and siblings, and spouses of each of those. Key to your disclosure, though, is that class of people, that immediate family, which parents, grandparents, children, adult children, the disclosure is only required if they live in your immediate household. But that was a decision that the council made as to how far this should go. That certainly could be revisited. So
let me just ask a follow-up for that, because this came up when I was on the county. If you, when you say that you have to vote, if you, out of abundance of caution, anybody in that extended family doesn't live with you, was on a contract, if you wanted to recuse yourself, you're saying you're not allowed to do that either?
So I have conversations with a number of you over the course of time when you come to me and say, hey, there's this matter on the agenda. Do I have a conflict? We talk it through. Own financial interest really kind of falls on a continuum. There's a little bit of subjectivity in that. But when we talk about those things, we're usually talking about your own employment and whether or not voting on an action that involves your own employment, even if you're not deriving a direct financial benefit, it could be you're not on a commission, your salary, it's not going to affect your pay, and it's not anything you're working on. So we have those conversations. But the short answer to your question is yes, as I said at the beginning, quoting from the School of Government, North Carolina is a duty to vote state. And I've talked with my colleagues around the state, School of Government, and our consensus as to why that is the law is the legislature doesn't want to give you an easy out on difficult political questions.
Okay. So, Councilor Fallon?
Yes, so why did I excuse myself for that law case?
So,
Because I had no gain from it.
Right. You were actually excused from the meeting. So, what I said was, if you're not excused from a vote, okay, it wasn't an excusal of the vote, it was an excusal from the closed session. So you were excused from the meeting, and the way the statute reads, if you're If you don't vote and you're present or have not been excused from the meeting, your vote counts as a yes.
So I didn't have to be excused, I could stay.
Well,
No, you told me I should be excused.
we can, I'd prefer to have that conversation privately.
That's not an exception. It's the law is the law. If you're going to hold it one way, then you hold it the other way.
Councilman Rodriguez?
Yeah, I don't want to get in the middle of anything here, but
Nor
can
do
you
I.
tell me that on all of the instances where people have recused themselves in the past, we applied this test rigorously? It just, I'm not sure that we have. So I take what you're explaining to us. When we went and we got this explained to us during the orientation session, and then I looked at subsequent events, I kind of thought, well, that's not the way it's actually happening. And we had situations where people were concerned about an association they had that didn't rise to the level of what you just described, and we voted to recuse them. And I don't know whether all of the things you just explained were applied in each of those cases.
I'll be happy to go back and review some of those and take a look at them and see what the distinctions are. Councilmember Driggs, I cannot recall in my time having discussions about recusals based on an adult child, a sibling, a parent, those things where the conversations that I recall taking place are when the member individually has potentially a direct impact or effect.
Right, then I wasn't trying to say anything. I just listened to what you said, and I thought about things that have happened in the past, and I'm not sure it's always happened exactly like that, is all I'm saying, so.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, I wanted to raise this issue because I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have recused myself several times, but I made that decision because I didn't want any perception, because a firm that I worked for part-time or, well, maybe full-time, which I got no money from it, but and I talked with Bob, I talked with Mac, and they told me the same thing, that I didn't have to. I did it because I felt better doing it.
But the point is, they didn't tell you couldn't.
I want to say that the point that I have the utmost respect when you're employed by or have something that's a direct relationship or something that causes you to have a personal gain here. And I have the utmost respect for even the question being raised, because I always think it's really important to be very clear about these kinds of issues. And for me, what I wanted to really make clear was that I have no spouse, I have no extended family who live with me, I have no adult children living with me. And so that is what, and I am not employed by any of the companies that are involved in these decisions or these contracts. So with that, I say, I understand where people may have recused themselves because there is a benefit from their employment or some financial connection. In this instance, I just also want to be clear that I do not meet any of those criteria. So thank you. I think we can.
Move for
We have a
approval.
move, okay. Second? Okay,
Conversation.
Councilor Smith?
I just want to say that this vote passed 11-0. I voted for it. I thought all the contractors that were awarded the contractors deserved it in no way, shape, or form. And my question in Mr. Leeper's integrity, he's done a lot for our community and is going to do a lot more for our community with this work. To me, this is about judgment, trust, and transparency. I think on projects, especially of this size, we owe that to our constituents. Again, I voted for this. It would have still passed. I have recused myself in the past on issues that I think that there's going to be an appearance of a conflict. One recently on Chick-fil-A vote that was very close, and to me, I did not feel like I should take part in it. I was granted that recusal, and it's all a matter of what we can live with. But this, again, is to me judgment, trust, transparency. Ready for the vote?
Okay. I think that we are ready to vote, and certainly appreciate the conversation, and absolutely we want to have every appearance of doing things the right way. So thank you, Mr. Hageman, as well. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next item, we have 32 and 33. Are those connected, Councilmember Kinsey?
I would love to connect them in the interest of time.
Yeah, go.
First one is land purchase for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, University City Division Station. And the other one is the purchase on Central Avenue for a 3.89 acre parcel for innovation and technology staff consolidation. And the reason I pull them, first of all, I'm supporting them wholeheartedly. But the reason I pull them was because I feel like the public should know that we're doing this and how much we're paying. The police department, $745,900. It's going to be on North Tryon in District 4. And then Central Avenue, it's a $2.4 million purchase, and it's in District 5. I totally support it. I do think in the future, issues like this these types of things should go on the business community, the business agenda. We've gotten overloaded on the consent items. Sometimes we don't pay as much attention to consent items as we should, and I think in the future, it's this kind of outlay, probably it should go on the business agenda. So with that, I'm happy to move approval of both of these purchases.
Councilmember Driggs? Oh, is there a second?
Yes.
Second.
Okay. Councilmember Driggs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to note, I will support this, but I did want to note I had a meeting this afternoon talking about the status of the station that has been proposed in my district for years now, and which seems to get overtaken by other projects. And it was explained to me that land costs and the availability of land in my district are a barrier. And I made the point during that meeting that this is a district that contributes 25% of the residential property tax base. If we have to pay more to get a proper police station there, it seems appropriate. It goes hand in hand. We get a lot of tax revenue from there because the real estate is expensive, and we should reinvest some of it. So I'm just commenting in the context of this that is an ongoing process. I was encouraged by the property manager's description of actions that are being taken, and I will be supporting this. Madam Mayor, if I may also, I just wanted to extend the courtesy of the Chamber to our former colleague and State Representative John Autry.
Yes.
John, it's good to see you.
You're not watching the Cubs?
I think we also see a council-elect member up there. Matt Newton is going to be a council member soon.
Mayor.
Councilmember Merritt?
Yes, I appreciate Ms. Kinsey to make a motion on behalf of District 5 for agenda item number 33 to
I represent everybody in Charlotte.
Thank you. And I see many East Side leaders here in support of this multi-million-dollar investment to District 5, and especially our former council member and our future council member for East Charlotte. And this investment will result in multi-million dollars in GDP impact with our investment in purchasing this building, also with construction of this vacant office building. And it will also help businesses along the corridor and further reinforce our commitment to economic development in East Charlotte. As I have been working very closely over the last few months with our real estate department head here, Tony Carolus, to understand the financials of leasing versus buying this building specifically for our technology department. Being a CPA, I was keen on understanding the financials, especially the payback period. And Tony quickly walked me through the numbers, and looking at the numbers, it's going to take less than 5 years payback period, so it also makes the financial sense. I appreciate Tony's effort with being so intentional in addressing community needs of economic opportunities, promoting community safety and stability, along with addressing our employee needs. So thank you, Tony. Last but not least, I would also like to thank our CIO, Jeff Stovall, and congratulate him in being named as the Public Sector CIO of the Year. We look forward to welcoming you on the east side, and neighbors are right here to welcome you and your staff to the east side. with this model, I'm looking forward to seeing more private sector investments following our lead in bringing additional investments and technology jobs to East Charlotte, because East Side is prime. With this, I would also like to second the motion to approve this investment in East Charlotte, and hope my colleagues will join me. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? We're okay to approve both at the same time, right?
Well, you got
32 and 33.
Yeah.
District 4. Mr.
No,
He's okay, he's good with it.
I was good with it,
Oklahoma
but
Police Department, Division
we are
Station.
done.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moved quickly there. Okay. Yay, the East Side is happy. That's gonna be great. It's a great place for all those employees that are gonna be located. Thank you all. Thank the East Side for their support. Thank you, Representative Autry, and soon-to-be Councilmember Newton for coming. All right, I'm trying to get back from the consent items to our next agenda item. Is the city manager report? Is that what's next?
I believe so.
Yes, it is. Okay, Mr. Manager.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and members of council. We have 3 awards we'd like to hand out tonight during this time period. And first, I'd like to start off with Victoria Johnson and her crew, if they'll come down. I'm very proud of her team. It's a unique award in that the Solid Waste Association of North America has awarded our great team with the City of Charlotte Solid Waste Services 2017 Innovation Award in Communication, Education, and Marketing. And what's amazing about the award is that it's really related to Healthy Communities Education Program, where Victoria and her amazing team have worked with 5,000 people and talked about how we eat can help our environment. So thank you so much, Victoria, and your team.
Wonderful.
she's ill. She doesn't want to get cooties.
Great job, man.
Good job.
How much did you have to pay Victoria to come out
I know,
here tonight?
It is so.
She's behind the scenes.
So we have been priming her through the meet and eat ceremony. So she.
Yeah, she's been with them.
So second, I hope we have Alexis Gordon here tonight. Excellent. Okay. So Alexis recently received a 2017 Global Services Award for individuals under 40 for exemplifying the Rotary Club's motto of service above self, both in our local community and globally. So congratulations.
I was there. Yes.
Yes, sir.
I was there at the Rotary event where she was given the award, and everyone there knows Alexis and the great work she's done, and they were all very complimentary.
She's doing an amazing job. Thank you, ma'am. And then lastly, and I guess this just is almost automatic. So for the 32nd consecutive year, the city has been awarded GFOA's Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. So I'd like to have Randy, Robert, and the whole crew come down. These are hardware we need to put on the wall.
Cracker Jack finance team.
So this will be on the wall.
That's coming up.
Hey.
Congratulations. Great job. Okay. Congratulations. Great job.
Finance department doesn't have fun, right? Congratulations.
You've done them all. Thank you.
Continue to keep us out of trouble.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you.
Oh my God, I'm so proud of you.
I know we're in good hands.
Financial report when I see it. Thank you.
Good job.
It's even better than the Thank you. Thank you. I'll be around when they miss it one year. Already. How to wait to get that calf. All right.
So thank you, Mayor.
So that's it.
That's your report, Mr. Manager?
That's the report for tonight.
All right. Positive news for the week. We got great city employees, absolutely. So the next item on our agenda is number 10, amending City Council's resolution on boards and commissions.
Oh, yeah.
This comes to us from the Governance and Accountability Committee. Councilmember Smith?
Thank you. We discussed this briefly upstairs for the viewing public's thing. We had a referral in July to the Governance and Accountability Committee to review boards and commissions' appointment eligibility criteria and whether the criteria that we are using for the Citizens Review Board should be expanded to other cities and, other city boards and commissions. At the September meeting, GAC reviewed appointment eligibility for the city's 35 boards and commissions, discussed other potential options for considerations. During tonight's dinner briefing, staff made a brief presentation and walked us through the committee's recommended change. The committee voted 4-0 to recommend this revision to the resolution on boards and commissions. I want to thank council members Mayfield, the vice chair, Ms. Kinsey, Ms. Lyles, Mayor Pro Tem, and Mr. Phipps on the committee. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Governance and Accountabilities Committee recommendation and adopt a revised resolution on boards and commissions, amending the appointment eligibility criteria for the Civil Service Board.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? And it was a good presentation at the dinner meeting.
It was.
today. Absolutely. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We have one appointment? Madam Clerk, one appointment.
One appointment to keep Charlotte beautiful. Jesse Boyd received 5 votes, and Tanya Clarkston received 6 votes, so Tanya Clarkston has been appointed.
Okay, very good. Congratulations.
Is she here? Is she here?
Okay, and that's our one appointment. Next, we have mayor and city council topics, and I want to remind folks that after the mayor and city council topics, we will be adjourning the regular business meeting and then resuming our recessed zoning meeting. So, Councilor Fallon?
I have a topic.
Okay, we can go around the dais. Councilor Ivory, do you have a topic? Councilor Rajmira?
No.
Councilor Driggs?
I just wanted to say briefly, I spent the weekend in New York City, and it's funny how I lived in New York and I've been there often, but since I've been on council, when I go to a city like New York, I see all kinds of examples of things to do and not to do. It's like your city council brain is spinning all the time. And the traffic, it just boggles the mind. I mean, you get outside of New York and there are mile-long, I don't think I need to tell everybody here this, but that's an example of something we need not to do.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Kinsey?
And my say for the evening, thanks.
Councilor Fallon?
Yes, I have to commend Danny Pleasant. There is never, ever that I asked him to do something, whether it was state or city, that quietly it got done the next day without any showboating. I have nagged him for years about the Sunset Bridge, that I kept telling him, it's shake, rattle, and roll. Every time I go over it, I think I'm going to end up in the highway under it. Well, for the west and the northwest Charlotte, that bridge is being repaired and fixed, but within a time, we will have a new bridge put in. That's the gift to West Charlotte.
Good, thank you.
Councilmember Isel.
I'm good, thank you, Mayor.
I just want to briefly say that thanks to all the bicycle advocates and organizers for the Biketoberfest that happened yesterday afternoon, and also, again, to CDOT for helping implement some protected bike lanes that are temporary, but we want folks to try those out and let us know how they like them. They're on 6th Street and 5th Street, going through Uptown, connecting Little Sugar Creek Greenway and Irwin Creek Greenway, and Stewart Greenway's in there as well. And you can ride for a long way on greenways and use their protected bike lane. And so, give us feedback at the city website. And thank you to Sustain Charlotte for the Biketoberfest, and like over 500 cycling enthusiasts are helping us reimagine our city to avoid the traffic that Councilmember Driggs is talking about, helping getting more people on bikes in a protected way, and also showing how easy it is to get around and connecting our small businesses. So it was a great event. Councilmember Eiselt was also there. And so thanks to all the organizers, and let us know about our bike lanes. Mayor Pro Tem.
I don't have anything.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Wait a minute, I'm looking for my speech. I don't have anything.
Councilmember Phipps.
Yeah, I would just like to remind the citizens in Northeast Charlotte to be careful in recognizing train safety. We had a couple of accidents recently on the McLean crossing near UNC Charlotte and the Back Creek crossing, one fatality on the McLean crossing, and one near vehicle train collision last week at Back Creek. I don't know if you've gone to any of these CATS meetings where they talk about the Blue Line extension. They have a pamphlet out there that talks about train safety, that you never should try to outrun the train or do things that would impede your car stopping on the tracks and such, because it takes about, it takes about a mile for a train, if it's really going, to come to a stop. So I would just remind the citizens to be careful. They had one little quote in there that, you shouldn't be walking on the tracks, and if you do walk on the track, assume that a train is coming. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of it, because we had some a fatality and a near miss here recently in Northeast Charlotte along that Norfolk Southern Rail Corridor. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Smith.
I do have a topic, and I've got a committee referral. May need to go to the manager and then figure out what committee. I'm not sure if it'll be economic development or transportation and planning. But we read in the newspaper about the closing of Catch-on Fish Market over on the Hawthorne Street Bridge. I know one of my favorite lunch spots, Leo's Deli, went out during Phase 1 years ago. And I don't think we have any sort of strategic plan in place during construction. I ate at 7th Street Deli a lot over at the corner of Hawthorne and 7th Street, and I know they've had some business impact, but as Phase 2 of the Gold Line begins to take on its life in other areas, I think there are going to be some serious business disruptions. I know that we had some law firms, former Mayor Knox was, I think, blocked in his law firm for a long time, but just, again, I don't know if this would come through transportation and planning, so I don't know if you want to get back with me on that, but I think we do need some sort of strategic plan in place to make sure that we have as little business disruption along the line as possible.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Mayfield.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mayor, I also want to take a moment to thank you for a proclamation. I'm not going to read the proclamation right now. We had outreach, yourself and I, from Reverend Melissa Mummert, who is actually the Advocacy and Resource Manager at Change Choices and the Vice Chair of Reentry Partners of Mecklenburg County. We will not be having any meetings until late November, but on November the 3rd, which is a Friday, that has been requested to be designated as Reentry Day, and I thank you, Mayor, for writing that proclamation. A number of the participants and those who really have been working hard around reentry and helping those that may have had challenges or had any interaction with our judicial system have been working hard, and they wanted to be here and sign up, but we had reached our max number, so they weren't able to. But I want to make sure that the community knows that on Friday, November the 3rd at 5:30 p.m., There will be a rally at Marshall Park. Again, it is the Reentry Day rally. Thanks to our mayor, we do have the letter of proclamation for that rally. Thank you to all of you who are at home. This rally is to bring attention to the needs of the people with criminal records here in Mecklenburg County. And they also wanted to ensure that I publicly thank you for the past efforts that you have had for our diverse community. And I want to thank the members of this council, since some will be leaving that were a part of the original conversation in 2013 when we passed Ban the Box. And we took that step to show the community how important we as government felt having the opportunity to get on with your life and be contributing members of society are. I also wanted to note, as my colleague traveled this weekend, I had the opportunity to be in Nashville. Nashville is and visit their chambers, thanks to one of my fellow colleagues there, Council Member Nancy A. Van Rees. So their chambers is a lot different since they have 40 members on their council. Their vice mayor has a much higher title, so they have little computers, so they look more like our General Assembly. So even though there are times where we may disagree and we may have deep discussions, I appreciate the fact that we have the opportunity to have that dialogue and come to agreement, because ultimately, more often than not, we're all on the same page with how we grow the city and the fact that there is a love for the city and for the roles that we have. So I wanted to take that moment also to say thank you and how much I appreciate the fact that even though we might not agree all the time, we still recognize the importance of doing this work, and that we are not a 40-member dais, because that would be a madhouse. Thank you,
That would be
ma'am.
hard. Okay. We are now going to adjourn the regular business meeting, so I need a motion
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Now
opposed?
the second one.
And now, I'm going to call to order our recessed October 16th, 2017 zoning meeting. And I think we have zoning committee members in the back who are going to come join us? Or maybe they're here.
What time are they ordering?
They're gonna come out.
In the other room.
So let me explain the zoning process.
We're gonna be done before.
Since now we're going to have several zoning public hearings that we were not able to complete last Monday. Our process for a zoning begins with applications submitted to our planning staff for review.
See my email?
There are usually two types of case on the agenda, but tonight we're only having hearings. For these hearings, anyone wishing to speak is asked to see our clerk before the start of the hearing. Our clerk has changed out to our zoning clerk. And she will press the buzzer at the end of the time when you are speaking. There'll be a staff presentation for each of the items. The petitioner will have 3 minutes to speak unless the petition is, unless people are signed up to oppose the petition or the staff is in opposition, and the petitioner will have 10 minutes. Opponents will get 10 minutes, and the petitioner will have a 2-minute rebuttal. And if no one is opposed or signed up to speak, staff will just do a short presentation, and we'll go on, we'll close that hearing and go to the next public hearing. The petition will also then go to the zoning committee of our planning commission for review and recommendation, and our zoning committee has magically appeared. And so I'd like to introduce them quickly through their chairperson, John Friday. I'd like to introduce your committee, since they're all here now.
And since I thought it was a continuation, I would not have to do this. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. I'm John Friday, Chairman of the Zoning Committee of the Planning Commission. Allow me to introduce my fellow committee members. Michael Sullivan, Bolin McClung, Dion Nelson, Elizabeth McMillan, Nassif Majid. The Zoning Committee will meet Wednesday, November 1st at 5:30 p.m. here at the Government Center. At that meeting, the Zoning Committee will meet to discuss and make recommendations on the petitions that have public hearings tonight. The public is welcome at that meeting, but please note it is not a continuation of the public hearing being held here tonight. Prior to that meeting, you are welcome to contact us to provide input. You can find the contact information on us and information on each petition on the city's website at charlotteplanning.org. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Friday. So next we need to vote on one deferral,
Mayor, the item number is listed incorrectly. It's item number 43, not item 40.
Okay, terrific. So the deferral is requested as item 43, that's petition 2017-130. Petitioner is 2915 Operations LLC. The request is for deferral until November 20th, 2017.
Move to defer.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next we move into our first hearing, item number 40. This is petition 2017-123 by Harris Teeter LLC, and Ms. Keplinger is going to tell us about this one.
This property is located in the northeast part of town, along University City Boulevard. This is W.T. Harris. This is our existing shopping center. The site we're talking about is totally within the confines and the boundaries of that existing shopping center. In terms of the existing zoning, the shopping center is zoned B1 SCD, which is an old zoning classification that predates our current zoning ordinance. It's shopping center district, and the request is to go to B2 CD, which is general business conditional. Around the subject property, across the street, you see most of the university area. State Employees Credit Union is located on the I1 CD. Industrial office and professional parks in this area, multifamily and single-family residential, and then as you move on across W.T. Harris, you have more commercial development. In terms of the adopted future land use, the area plan, which is the University City area plan, which was adopted in 2012, recommends office and retail for this entire strip of development, including our subject property. The request before you tonight is for a gasoline station that is associated with an inline grocery store that's already at the center. The permitted uses are limited to automotive fuel, gasoline center with a maximum of 7 fueling stations and 14 pumps, and accessory uses. And those accessory uses might be vending machines and things of that nature, a small amount of retail. It does allow a 250 square foot kiosk, and that would be for attendance, restrooms, or some additional retail sales. An alternate use for this site is for surface parking, and the alternates are in case the fueling station does not come to fruition. So it could be parking, or it could be an express pickup lane for the grocery store that's the inline grocery store. And if it is, then the maximum building square footage would be limited to 2,000. Car washes are prohibited in all cases. They have vehicular access to this site, which through the driveway on University City Boulevard. You can see University City here. The traffic pattern for patrons, they will use the existing traffic pattern through the center, and also an existing signal that's located at W.T. Harris and University City Boulevard. As one of the conditions, the petitioner has agreed to add a 5-foot sidewalk connection in this location, which is off-site from the property to be rezoned. That will enhance the connectivity, the pedestrian connectivity along this area. A couple things I wanted to mention in terms of why it's important that we don't have driveways for this particular part of development is because it keeps us from having driveway conflicts along University City Boulevard, because everything that is being used is already existing and internal to the site. And also the plan recommends a multi-use path along University City Boulevard. So we'll avoid vehicular conflicts with the pedestrian path and also promote that pedestrian path through that additional connection that the petitioner has agreed to commit to. These are the elevations for the proposed gas station. And you can see the grocery store name on that. So staff is recommending approval of this petition upon the resolution of the outstanding issues. In my presentation, I went over the rationale that staff had for this approval. We do have outstanding issues that we feel will be addressed by the time this comes back to you for decision. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And signed up to speak in favor, we have John Carmichael, Garrett Marovitz, Maggie Jones, and Steve Blakely. Mr. Carmichael, you have 3 minutes.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council and the Zoning Committee, I'm John Carmichael here tonight on behalf of Harris Teeter. As Mayor Roberts said, Garrett Marovitz of Harris Teeter is with us, as are Steve Blakely and Maggie Jones of Kimley Horn, should you have any questions. Tammy did a wonderful job going over the site plan. I just want to point out a few things. The kiosk building would only be 250 square feet, and the only access that patrons would have to the interior portions of that building would be the restrooms. So it's not a convenience store, although there would be accessory snacks and drinks sold through vending machines, and then there would be an attendant there from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., and the attendant would have an office in that kiosk. The canopy, the columns for the canopy would have a brick veneer, as would the kiosk, and the brick would match the existing Harris Teeter, the brick on the existing Harris Teeter store in the shopping center. The pumps would be stainless steel. They'd be located on tile islands. There'd be a 360-degree security camera system in place, so it would be a secure facility, and it'd be well lit. And I will tell you that we did have a community meeting, obviously, and we only had 3 attendees, but the attendees lived in the residential area to the rear of our site, and the proposal was well received, and some of the comments they made were they felt like this would actually improve security in the shopping center. So we're happy to answer any questions that you may have, and Harris Teeter's hopeful to get your support, and this is an important business opportunity for them, and they're pursuing this throughout their stores in the Carolinas and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carmichael. This is in District 4. Councilor Phipps, do you have any questions?
Oh, yeah. I know the proposal talks to up to 7 stations and 14 pumps. Have we reached a final decision on how many actual pumps and stations we're going to have?
As currently planned, I believe there are 5 10 fueling stations and 5 pumps. I think that was to give them a little bit of expansion area, Councilmember Phipps. Mm-hmm. But as currently planned, it's the 5 and the 10.
Okay. Also, I was curious as to the trip generation that was computed. Now, I know this is a part of a complex that's already there, and the grocery store is already there. So how'd you come up with these many trips? Because it seems like to me a lot of trips will be internal to the site. I mean, if somebody's going to go to Harris Teeter, they says, well, since I'm here, I might as well get some gas. But I was curious about how you come up with, you go from 0, because there's nothing there but parking, to 22, to almost 2,300 trips.
Good evening. I'm Steve Blakely with Kimley Horn. These trips are the ones that were calculated by CDOT using ITE, the standard trip generation rate, Institute of Transportation Engineers. But we have done some studies, as you're indicating, that has looked at other facilities where there is a primary use associated with fuel just like this, and the internal capture, you're exactly right, is around the 40% range. So extremely higher, because the patrons and the customers are already there buying groceries. That takes trips off the road without having to go to another fueling center to get their car filled up.
Okay. Can I ask another question? Now, this will not have the same characteristics as like a Costco, where you would have, like, to be able to get gas, you have to use a Costco, so anybody can use this facility, right?
Correct. Yes, sir. There are incentives using the VIC card.
Oh, okay. Yes. Now, the elevations that you showed, are they the final elevations, or are you still working with other parties to come up with a more unique design? And
these are the elevations that are pretty standard for the Harris Teeter Fuel Center, and these are the ones that they're part of the conditional rezoning plan. So as I understand it, they're the final elevations as we're here tonight. Yes, sir.
Okay. Because I was under the impression that there's still some negotiation going on with some on the actual aesthetics of the facility, as presented.
Well, we're working with, planning on the screening along University City Boulevard. We're certainly doing that.
Thank
Move the public hearing be closed.
We got another.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a personal comment.
Councilmember Kinsey.
I don't know what Harris Teeter is coming to, or my Harris Teeter. I can guarantee you I will not shop at a Harris Teeter that has a fuel, whatever. And thank heavens, my Central Avenue store doesn't have room for a fuel for a gas station. I would certainly support this, but I'll never go there. I don't shop. I'm not going to shop at a Harris Teeter if they have one of those. Harris Teeter's a grocery store. It's my grocery store.
They have to adjust their revenue estimates.
Okay.
Not making any
Councilmember
money.
Mitchell.
Move the public hearing be closed.
Second. Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Carmichael. Our next item is number 41. Petition 2017-124 by Stockbridge 77 Corporate Park LLC, and this is Council District 3, Councilmember Mayfield. And Ms. Keplinger is going to tell us about this one.
This property is located on the east side of Interstate 77, north side of Clanton Road, off of St. Vardell Lane. The property is shown in yellow. It is an existing building with existing parking. In terms of the existing zoning, you see the gray area that is all shown. This is all distributive business zoning, one little place of B1 zoning. The request is to go from BD, which is distributive business, to B2, general business conditional. Across the interstate, we have retail with residential behind it, industrial, and then across Clanton Road, we have additional retail. To the north of the site, we have MUD optional zoning. This property is located in the South End Business Park, and the future land use map calls for, or the future land use plan calls for office, industrial, warehouse distribution uses for this site, as well as the rest of the site within the center. So the request is for the reuse of a approximately 32,000 square foot building and its parking. There are to be no expansions associated with this rezoning. The property is, like I mentioned, in an existing business park. They have proposed to have uses such as indoor recreation, wholesale business, governmental buildings, and clinics, uses that are complementary to the other uses within the business park. They have agreed to prohibit uses that are not complementary to other uses in the business park, such as retail, eating, drinking, and entertainment establishments, automotive type uses, and it also prohibits residential uses. Staff is recommending approval of this petition upon the resolution of the outstanding issues related to site design. The rationale for the staff recommendation I actually went through as I presented the petition, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Keplinger. And we have 3 folks signed up in favor: John Carmichael, Terry Brennan, and Rick Bryant. Mr. Carmichael.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, Pro Tem, members of the council and the zoning committee. I'm going to be really brief. As Ms. Keplinger said, the existing building would remain in place. There'd be no expansions. The whole purpose of this rezoning is to allow a martial arts studio that's been in business for over 20 years to locate in about a 7,000 square foot portion of this building. There's no intention to have uses that are not compatible with the existing uses, and I was just looking at the plan. We've got 34 prohibited uses under this rezoning in the B2 district, so it would be consistent with what's out there, but here again, the whole point was to allow an existing business that's been in our community for years to locate in this facility.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions from council?
Move to close.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
That's what it means, Council President Mayfield.
All right.
Close it.
The last item we have on our agenda, number 42, is petition 2017-125 by East Group Properties. And this is outside the city limits, west side of Sandy Porter Road. And Ms. Keplinger is going to tell us about this one.
So as the mayor indicated, this property is located off of 485, which is shown here. It's actually to the north between Gable Road and Sandy Porter Road. Just as a point of reference, the Charlotte Premium Outlets are located a little bit off the map, just right here. You can see the corner of the building. This request is to rezone from R3, which is this little portion of the property, and I1CD, all within the airport noise overlay, to I1CD, all within the airport noise overlay. The future land use map shows the property, the major portion of the property as industrial. This is a result of a 2016 rezoning. At the time that the property was rezoned, the developer did not have control of this parcel of land, which is currently zoned R3. It is an existing legally non-conforming body shop that is on that property, which they have now gained control of, and they're requesting that it be rezoned with the remaining portion of the property. The rezoning proposes a little bit more than 250,000 square feet of buildings in Building 1 and Building 2. It prohibits a number of uses, including vehicle rentals, service stations, repair garages, ED banks. They commit to a maximum of 10% that may be devoted to office use in either Building 1 or 2. The height is limited to 45 feet. They provide streetscape and a 12-foot wide asphalt multi-use path along Sandy Porter Road. They are contributing $25,000 for future planned improvements along Sandy Porter Road. The site plan actually provides architectural commitments regarding the character, style, coloring for both of the buildings, as well as transparency for the Building 1, transparency restrictions for the Building 1 that faces along Sandy Porter Road. This development is actually another phase of the development that we have seen all around this, which is back along Gable Road. We've had several rezonings back in here. The building materials commitments are to keep it similar with the rest of these properties, consistent with the notes on those rezonings. There are buffers along with this petition, 50 feet to the north, 50 feet to the south, and 37.5 across the street from the residential properties on Sandy Porter Road. And also they provide limitations on the construction access and construction hours. So staff is recommending approval of this petition upon the resolution of the outstanding issues. The airport noise overlay says that this property is not conducive for residential development. The majority of the site is consistent with the area plan recommendation for office warehouse distribution. The one little site that was previously zoned residential and has the non-conforming use on it is also appropriate for office uses, although the adopted plan did recognize the existing use. This rezoning will expand the industrial park in an area where it is compatible and with uses that are compatible. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Keplinger. And we have 3 folks signed up in favor: John Carmichael, Nick Jones, and Greg Welsh. Mr. Carmichael, it's your night. Carmichael Show.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council and Zoning Committee. I'm John Carmichael. With me tonight are Nick Jones with the petitioner and Greg Welsh, Oak Engineering. Ms. Keplinger did a really good job of going through the plan, but I think essentially, and I think one of the important things to note is that, as she indicated, is this property here, which is the site is this I1CD portion and this R3D portion. 22 acres of the 24 acres was rezoned to I1CD back in 2016 to accommodate Phase 4 Steel Creek Commerce Park. Part of that 2016 petition was Phase 3 of Steel Creek Commerce Park. As Ms. Keplinger said, the petitioner did not own this 2-acre portion. There was a non-conforming automotive repair shop on the R3 portion of the site for years. Once again, the petitioner now has control, in fact has acquired that 2-acre site. So the purpose of the rezoning is to amend the approved plan for the 22-acre portion of the site and rezone the R3 2-acre portion of the site to I1CD to incorporate the 2 acres into Steel Creek Commerce Park and to allow the development of up to 2 buildings on the reconfigured site. The 2 buildings could contain up to 255,570 square feet of office, warehouse, and distribution uses. The buildings would be consistent with other phases of Steel Creek Commerce Park. This is an existing building in Steel Creek Commerce Park. And as Ms. Coventer said, the petitioner is providing CDOT with $25,000 towards street improvements on Sandy Porter Road. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, by the way, for allowing us to have these 3 hearings tonight rather than making us wait till the next zoning meeting. It's really important from a timing perspective, particularly for the Martial Arts Studio operator, so that's greatly appreciated.
Well, we are pleased to be able to fit it in and glad it worked out. Thank you for that. Thanks. Councilmember Mayfield.
Thank you, Mayor. Can we go back to the slide that's going to show, 1, where we're looking at improvements, and 2, how will the trucks and employees be entering and exiting this?
Would you prefer this one, Ms.
Yes.
Mayfield? Okay, so this is Steel Creek Commerce Park, here, here, here. This is the church. These are other industrial uses that are not part of Steel Creek Commerce Park. These are the 2 buildings that are proposed pursuant to this petition. Vehicles would enter the site from Sandy Porter Road, and this would be the truck court back here. And then automotive parking would be here and here. So this is where employees would park, Ms. Mayfield, and then the trucks would be here. So the truck court would be screened to the rear and to the front, so you would not see this truck court from Sandy Porter Road. And the front of the building that faces Sandy Porter Road, this is where there are the transparency commitments, as Ms. Kelvin mentioned, but there's one entrance from Sandy Porter Road.
So just for clarification, and Tammy, you can help me with this one, because the St. Joseph Vietnamese Catholic Church is still there, and the church is still active? You wouldn't know.
It is still there.
As far as you know, because
yes,
what I'm concerned about is, 1, definitely we need more industrial, but I'm concerned about the fact that we're blocking in the church. So as we're continuing to do this development, when you look at that buffer or how close it is to the church, any possibility or opportunity, if the church were to expand, or are we creating a situation where the church is going to end up having to relocate because we've surrounded it with industrial? Have you had, I know we didn't have community show up to the meeting, but have you had any conversations, or has your client had any conversations with the church to see their concerns, if any?
I'm not aware of any conversations. They were invited to the neighborhood meeting, and as you know, Councilmember Mayfield, we've had many rezonings out here and community meetings, and there may have been one meeting where an individual from the church came, but I'm not aware of any of the, we probably had 4 rezonings out here.
Right.
And typically there's been very little attendance. We are providing the buffers that are required on our site. But I'm not aware, I personally have not had any conversations with them.
Tammy, your office can help me with this, with giving me the contact information for the St. Joseph Vietnamese, or maybe from the city clerk's office, where we reach out to the community, because I think we need to at least do one specific call out to the church to make sure, because again, the other developments have been pretty much on the backside and off to the east of it. So I want to make sure that this isn't going to cause a challenge. So if we can just talk to them, and since we're still early in the hearing process, that should help.
Yeah, and as I said, what's really happened here is the incorporation of the 2 acres. There is, and then an additional building. There's 1 building approved now, Ms. Mayfield, and there is a bump in square footage from what's currently approved. It's about a 90,000 square foot bump that's being requested because you have the additional 2 acres. 10% office, so it's not an office use. It's as you know, you've been to the park.
Right. Okay, move to close.
Second. Were there questions?
Yeah, just one
Councilman
tough
Mitchell.
question. Mr. Carmichael, What high school did you graduate from?
West Charlotte High School.
There you go. Move the public hearing. Just want to get that for the record.
You
had a better jump shot.
Bias?
Oh, come on.
Councilor Fallon?
Finally, some decent architecture.
Oh, thank you.
Nice. It's
Okay.
nice.
Appreciate that.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
JC.
Oh, and by the way, that martial arts studio is where I practice. Oh, really? Charlotte Martial Arts Academy? My studio. Good people.
I found my speech, man.
Absolutely.
So move to adjourn?
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
You can
City manager won't let me say my speech.
Can she get a
Is there a
second?
second?
You can stay, James.
I can stay.
I didn't hear a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, we're
Monday
adjourned.
night football. Boy, y'all all right with me.